Welcome back to Beyond the Singularity, a podcast where we speculate, percolate, and exasperate all things science fiction. I'm your host, Kyle Culver, gaming as Diabetic Gamer, and you are listening to Episode 4. In this episode, I got to chat with indie game developer Seth, also known as Endesga, who's in the middle of creating his most ambitious game to date, Nykra. It's a sci-fi platformer with a strong emphasis on story, and boy is there story. Characters, lore of ancient civilizations, and even an entirely constructed language made specifically for the game. Seth is bursting at the seams whenever he talks about his game, and this interview is no exception. I really admire his enthusiasm and dedication to making a quality experience in a game that looks and sounds just fantastic. He released a demo of the game late last year that you can try for yourself that gives you just a smidgen of what the game has to offer. I, for one, really enjoyed it, and if you're listening to this podcast on YouTube, you'll be able to see some of the gameplay from the demo. We talk about some of the other things that are in the game, including the protagonist Kyo, that's K-E-U, and her best friend Io, that ironically is also a super weapon who is coveted by other characters you come across in the game. Seth dives into the emotional aspects of the game, his inspirations from real life, and is looking to the future with the dream to create a sequel to Nykra. Oh, and did I mention he's creating this entire game solely by himself? The coding, the design, the music, even distribution. It's one of, if not the, hallmark of this game.
I mean, it's a game about discovery. It's a game about being a little bit lonely. It's a game about confusion. I think confusion is an easy way of describing the game. Because you basically start off with nothing much, and you have to find your way through the area, and you have to find your way, and you discover things, and you are given this task, and you have to figure it out. But the whole point of the game is to discover yourself, and to discover the scenery and the people who talk to you, and you have to deal with the situations that arise, and all of that sort of squished into this sci-fi story on the Firstborn universe in the Ep04, which is like a little thing I created, but yeah.
Yeah, so it's supposed to be an experience, yeah?
Yeah, I think, a lot of people confuse it, unfortunately, with a adventure game or with something a lot more complicated. But in truth, it really is just something that I wanted to make, something that, like, an experience or something that would get people thinking, but nothing more. Like, it wasn't supposed to be anything crazy.
Does that mean it's pretty linear?
No, this is the thing, because I knew that with a story game, it's very difficult to make things non-linear. Games like Skyrim do it pretty well. They have a main story. You don't have to do it. And I knew that I sort of need to make sure the game isn't too linear, or else people will probably get bored, because there's a lot of dialogue. So I'm thinking, okay, so there is a lot of planning that goes to each room, and to make sure that places are easily to get in and out from. You might have this large amount of dialogue, and then you land on a planet, and then you can literally, I mean, you have to go somewhere. Maybe the character you're talking to tells you to go somewhere, but you can literally just go anywhere in the meantime, right? So it's I'd say it's partially non-linear, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Going forward and then going back, I mean, there are some mechanics that come to mind when I think about that. Is like some areas in one map on a planet, say, that you can't access, that requires a key that you don't actually acquire until much later in the game. Then you can go back and open that room. Is it kind of something like that?
Yeah. There's a lot of, I mean, it's not. I mean, there's some backtracking, but there's not a lot of things that require large amounts of travel just to go back to something. A lot of the game, I guess you could say it guides you. It's like it holds your hand, and it sort of takes you to place, and it's not too difficult to find out where to go. But there are places, especially because one of my favorite games is Fez, and a lot of inspiration comes from Fez. And so, for example, you might find a secret, and maybe it's a key that has a specific symbol on it, and then you realize that, hold on, I saw a door back there, like 2 planets away, that had a door, like a symbol on the front of that door, the same symbol as this key. What would happen if I tried it on that door? That sort of thing. Like, you don't have to, because you could go in there and only be a bit of treasure or a bit of something, or maybe some
Yeah.
ancient runes. But I think that's something that I really want to, I guess you could say, I want to put it in. I want to put it into the game a lot, like a lot of that sort of stuff, so people have a reason to discover more.
Yeah. So it sounds like you're a fan of sort of the old the traditional approach to gaming, where you just kind of jump in and figure it out yourself.
Yeah,
Are we going to see?
yeah,
Because I know in the demo, you introduced just a tiny bit of tutorial showing text on screen, hitting spacebar and arrows and whatnot. But
yeah.
really, are the controls that simple?
Yeah, the controls are incredibly. Well, at least I tried to make them incredibly simple.
I mean, I think they are.
Unfortunately, yeah. Well, a lot of people. The thing is, a lot of people complain though, because a lot of people going, why aren't the walking keys WASD? Why are they the arrow keys and
It's
blah
so
blah blah
simple, it's
blah.
complicated.
Yeah, exactly, exactly.
Yeah.
I mean, a lot of people want to use their mouse. A lot of people want to use lots of other keys, and people going, why can't I, rebind them? I mean, I'm going to add that sort of thing into the full game, but it'll be
Okay.
limited. Um, the thing is, though, is the game is built around the arrow keys, the UIs, everything. I never wanted a game that was highly complicated because I want the game to be easily, easily in quotation marks, easily importable to like mobile or to like the
Oh,
Switch
okay.
or to the console. So obviously, the more buttons you add, the more complicated it gets. So I knew that if I was to make it simple, I need to sort of combine certain things. So I thought, okay, well, what's one thing? If you're in a user interface, what's one thing that you aren't doing that you did do? If that makes sense. So basically,
Yeah.
if you're walking with the arrow keys and you go into user interface, you're no longer walking, so you don't need those buttons anymore.
Right.
So why don't you use those same buttons to interface with the UI? Why add whole new buttons? Because there are a lot of games out there, like Skyrim, where you walk with one joystick and you select with the other, or you move the camera with one, move the other, and you go to the user interface, and you're pressing all these buttons, but they're all different things. And like, for example, selecting things. Selecting things is the A button, and it's in game it's the A button too. But there's whole different buttons as well that they're involved. Inventory, opening it up, opening boxes and attacking, blah blah blah, and it's
Hmm.
I mean, for someone, because I remember talking to, I think it was my sister, when she first started playing Skyrim, she was horribly confused because there was just so many buttons, and I don't blame her. I mean,
Yeah.
it
Yeah.
took
Yeah.
took me a while as well, and I knew that from that, I needed to create something that was almost stupidly easy. I mean, there was a problem where it seemed some kind of like awkward, and I have had people say that the controls are a little bit awkward, and that's fine, but only because,
It's
as
different.
far as I know, no one's done it before.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I can agree by saying that it's a little awkward, but after playing, maybe 20 minutes of the game,
Yeah,
I
you get
kind of
used
got
to it.
used to it. Yeah.
Yeah,
It was
and that's
simple
the
enough
thing.
that my mind understood it.
Yeah, and I have found that people said that to me. They said, oh, the controls are really strange, but I mean, I eventually got used to them, and they said that in a negative way, and I can understand why they did. But in my mind, if they didn't get used to it and they still said something like I just can't use the buttons, that would be a problem. But the fact that they said I got used to it, that's a win for me, because it means that it works. It's just because they're used to other keys, that's why it's different. It takes a while.
Yeah. Do you think
So
that would influence yourself in creating a different kind of key binding for those people who are used to the other
well,
types?
I don't know. Well, this is the thing. I was very very tempted to to have like no key binding at all, have it so it's just set in stone. But I think I might make it because there's you got the arrow keys, you got the spacebar for jump, and then you got the ASDF keys and E for inventory. Like you sort of your hand is sort of already where your WSD fingers would be, which is why I did it instead of because a lot of games that use arrow keys generally do the ZXCV sort of down at the bottom for like extra controls.
Yeah.
Um, but I decided to go with where your hand naturally rests if you're used to WSD and use those keys instead. And I felt that was a lot better because I had no people complain about the ASDF keys rather than the arrow keys because they complained about those. So what I'm saying is that I might make it so the ASDF keys might be remappable, but not the arrow keys. Because the arrow keys, I mean, it's literally in the UI. There are arrows pointing, because when you see an arrow, that is what you can press, right? And I found people really caught on to that really quickly. If you see an like a UI of anything, and you see that very distinctive arrow that isn't all pixely and stuff, you know that that's an arrow key direction you can press and it does something. So yeah, that's basically it.
Now, going into the game, you talk about inventory and the UI for all of that and whatnot. Talking about inventory, well, what are some of the things that we can pick up? Because I know in the demo there were like mechanics and I don't know, building parts and whatnot.
Yeah.
And there was some health mechanics as well, but like, what's it all for?
Yeah, well, this is something that I knew would cause a lot of confusion or some confusion in the demo. And some people did, even in playthroughs, they were saying things like, how come I'm finding, RAM? How come I'm finding screws? What can I do with it? And then the demo ends and they're like, oh. And I know, and I was like, do I take it all out just for now, or do I keep it in? I decided to keep it in. The reason why all that stuff is in there is because you can actually make stuff. And in fact, I'm working on it now. It's literally, it's kind of Minecraft-esque. I mean, it's not totally to that degree, but you basically collect, aluminium sheets, and you collect screws, and you collect all these parts and pieces because there are going to be puzzles and there's going to be parts where you can, you need to make something to do the puzzle. So Q finds out that she's incredibly talented in terms of creating.
Q's
things.
Your protagonist, right?
Yes, Q is my protagonist, Keu. I've had a lot of people get a little confused with her name, which is fair enough, because some people think it's literally, when I say it and I've never seen it written, they think it's the letter Q, which is fair enough. But yeah, her name is a little strange. A lot of the names in Nykra are a little strange. I'm sure we'll talk about that in a second. But yeah, and so Q finds out that she can create some things pretty early on in the game. This is basically amidst in the demo sort of area, because there'll be like halfway through the demo sort of length, there'd be a point where she finds a workbench and you can actually create some things.
Okay.
So that's what all that stuff is for, to originally. And there's also old computers in the game as well. So you might find a broken old computer, and you open it up, and this will open up a whole user interface, and you notice that it's missing some RAM, and it can't run without RAM or something like that. And so you find the RAM and you put it in the computer, and then suddenly it runs. So there is actually, because a lot of people notice that the game is very like circuitry based. There's a lot of, and I mean it is, and that's the whole point, is that the game is it's designed and styled around computers and technology. The dirt has circuitry running through it, and everything is connected. There's wires, there's everything. So it only
is that part of the story? Is that part of this world? Everything's connected.
Spoilers. Yeah, I mean, it sort of is. It's okay. Not a major part, but it definitely is some part of the story. Because there's a lot of dialogues that sort of explains basically what I'm saying, how things are connected. Blah blah blah.
Well, it seems like a lot of the story that we got in the demo was lore based. A lot of the background for what the place was.
Yeah, well, unfortunately, I couldn't in the demo. It's sort of difficult because I can't like that. That's what the intro of the game is going to be, because a lot of the really juicy information actually comes a little later on. But I knew I couldn't put any of that in the demo well, because that's not really how the
It
game is
would be so
planned.
confusing. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. I can't just like throw the player in and go like, oh, there's the darkness in Nenia and planet this and that, and you have to go find it. I mean, you'd just be like, oh, okay.
Well, I'm not gonna
So,
lie. The introduction to some of these aspects got me really curious, and I wanted to know more after the
oh,
demo
that's
finished.
that's good.
Yeah,
Thank you. I mean, that means that I've done it well.
you
Because
have. I'm a big fan. That's for sure.
well, I mean, look, I put a lot of time, I put a lot of effort, and I mean, some of the dialogue is pretty choppy still, and I need to fix it. And I'm very thankful that there are a lot of people already that like the lore, and like the style and like the way that it's portrayed. And it's only going to get like it gets more and more intense
Mhm.
as the demo finishes. And people have seen the end of the demo. Things go wrong, whatever, and then basically from there, that's when the real story starts. Because what I wanted when I was making the intro of the game was I wanted it to almost seem like an almost boring experience. I wanted it to seem
Okay.
like you were just running through a grass planet, and you are. And the fact that I made a green grass almost made people first consider, is this Earth? And then they realize, no, it's not Earth. Okay. And then you start to see these like weird runes, and you see these weird aliens, and then you see a ship fly into the atmosphere, and you're like, what's going on? And it gets more and more confusing, and that's sort of what I wanted. I wanted to be borderline boring and borderline confusing. Um,
Introducing all of this crap to the player that they
yeah,
have no idea what they are.
yeah, exactly, and because that's what I'm trying to do, and it's been very difficult. Is literally portray how Q is feeling in this
Yeah.
situation. Because if you were born from nothing and you just appeared, I mean, it's incredibly hard to think of because no one that's never happened to anyone.
Now,
But
I can understand not wanting to
yeah,
share anything from this game simply for that little fact that
yeah,
you don't want to ruin the kind of first person experience from
yeah,
you
it's
playing the player
yeah,
or the
it's a very
character.
good, yeah, it's a difficult situation because I mean I could give away the whole story really easily, as most game developers are in these situations, but it's sort of like it's one of those games that I hope to be the game where people experience it differently. So one person might play it
Mm-hmm.
and maybe they go, "Oh, okay, yeah, that was cool," and then maybe on the other extreme, maybe someone starts crying at the end. I don't know because there is quite a few intense scenes
Mm-hmm.
um, that I have planned, and I am worried that it might trigger some people. I don't know, in an emotional way, because when I was writing it, I was getting a little emotional because I knew that the way that it's put together, there are certain characters that mean a lot, that will probably mean a lot to some people
Mm-hmm.
because of like past experiences. So, for example, Q is a reflection of your typical sort of like, well, she's sort of like a 22-year-old lady. I mean, she's well, this sort of goes down another path. She's not really a lady. She's just an alien. She's completely sexless. But
For the sake of
like
pronouns.
for this, yeah, I mean, she doesn't care. I sort of just designed her as she doesn't. She's such a laid back person. She doesn't care what you call her. But anyway, and so Q goes through a lot of self discovery moments, which you know there are a lot of things that are important. And I took a long time to write these things because I wanted to make sure that they weren't too corny. I wanted to make sure they weren't weird. And there are bits where Q literally looks in the mirror, sees herself for the first time, and she doesn't smile. She sort of goes, "Oh, that wasn't what I expected."
Mm.
And that there was sort of what I was wanting in terms of it's sort of like a reflection of the people who don't necessarily have too much self-esteem in their life.
Okay.
And so Q's sort of like a reflection of that.
Mm-hmm.
So I wouldn't be surprised if people would relate to that,
Now,
because
is this something that's kind of influenced by any previous games that you've had this kind of experience with?
um actually no. Well, I wouldn't really say games, no, but more of myself and people. I think yeah. I mean everyone sort of goes through that teenage point of their life where they sort of they either don't really like how they look or they don't really care,
Oh, sure.
or
Everything's
there's this
melodramatic and
yeah,
blown out of
exactly.
proportion, but
So
it's so
yeah,
very important.
yeah, and that's sort of what it's from because it's taking. like I don't really play games often, which is why I couldn't really answer that, because I don't know. I might have gotten it from something, but I mean, half the games I play are generally things like Skyrim, and they're not really like that. But yeah, but Nykra itself, and Q as the character, I really wanted her to be a reflection of things that I've read online, or stories that I've heard of people, maybe people who experience depression, or are suffering from certain things. And I sort of want that in a very, very subtle way. Like, I don't want it to be
Mm-hmm.
too intense, but I
Just
did
something
want
touching
something.
that makes an impact.
Yeah, I just wanted to touch base a little bit on that,
Okay.
and I do hope that people see that. I mean, some people won't. Some people, um, some people won't be phased. They'll be like, okay, cool,
Well,
or
I
maybe
for
that
one,
scene
and
happens.
I'm looking forward to those moments because I like those kind of experiences. Not
Yeah,
just like in games, it's a whole nother level because you're experiencing it yourself. You're in control of this character who's going through it,
yeah,
and you're literally placing yourself in their feet. And
yeah,
like you said, you're spending a lot of time on writing these moments to make sure that they're perfect. And if they're given the right traction, the right I don't know, quality, I suppose,
yeah, yeah.
you can feel that. And I personally enjoy those moments because I'm a very emotional person, despite what some of my comedic videos look like.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of people
I
are
love
though.
feeling.
Yeah, yeah. And I do feel that deep down, a lot of people are like that as well. Some people just don't want to show it, which is, I mean, it's fine,
Oh,
but
yeah, that's a whole nother conversation on its own.
yeah, yeah. But that there is actually an important part of what sort of how Nykra is, formed, because you meet these characters. You meet an alien who eventually becomes an acquaintance during the story, and he is a what's the word I'm trying to find? There's a stereotype out there of these young Japanese men who live by themselves in houses, and they sort of like surround themselves with computers and stuff, and they eat shitty food. And there's a name for that, where they just hide. And
Okay.
there was when I was reading up about it, because apparently it's a thing that's going around. It's not very good.
Hmm.
That inspired me to write this next character, who's this guy who basically he surrounds his life with very like materialistic value. He buys the best shoes and he buys the coolest jacket. But deep down, he's a very sad person.
Mm-hmm.
Which again, I've experienced some people who are very much like that, and I know that people might play it and listen to this guy talking and go, "Oh shit, okay." Like that, I think that there might be some people who actually realize some of these like personal traits of the
Yeah.
characters that you meet. And if they don't, that's fine. I mean, the game is still a game. It's not, no hard done. But
So a lot of
it's
this seems like it's being pulled from a lot of your own life experiences, people
oh,
you
very much
know.
so. In fact, you can almost go to the extent and say that Nykra is my life. Like, it is a
Wow.
reflection of everything that I've experienced, down from the very start, of um, how Q is very confused in her area.
Mm-hmm.
That's sort of how I felt when I first moved to New Zealand, and how I had no friends because I had to go to a new school, and I had to I had to discover things myself, and I felt confused. And I guess, yeah, I mean, everyone experiences these things. A lot of people just don't think about it. I
Yeah.
think is the case here. Whereas I'm wanting to remind people that even if you're playing a game that's a pixel game, it's a sci-fi game, there's still these characters that appear, that have these problems, and it's a very normal thing.
I think you have the
Um,
ability to transcend words and just give them the affirmation that, yeah, people feel this way.
Yeah, I hope so. I mean, one thing that I've found when I was adding a lot of the dialogue to Nykra, especially when the scene where Q looks into the mirror and says,
Mm-hmm.
not what I expected. The moment I added that in, I actually found myself, um, how do I say, like I found myself, um, like acting as the character in a slightly different manner.
Oh, sure.
So
Yeah.
like so the moment that happened, I realized because Q was originally, I mean, I've already had this plan, so sorry, story already planned out, but um a lot of the because I've written the story, and that's sort of near the end is when Q becomes confident in herself, right? So
Hmm.
there's that progression of confusion to confidence,
Yeah.
and since I've always had that final bit in my mind, I've always treated Q as this sort of very confident character. And I totally forgot that I had all this at the very start, and then now when I'm creating things, I realized. Yeah, she's actually a really sad person at the very start of the game, and now all this dialogue I'm going, okay. And I'm writing, I'm going, actually, yeah, she probably wouldn't say that. And I'd edit it and blah, blah, blah. Because of that one scene that I added,
Yeah.
realizing that this very start of the game is actually different to how I felt it was. Yeah.
That's cool. Now, you said you've been working on this a while.
A long, long while. Yeah.
Has it been 8 years now, I think?
That's a bit of a stretch. I think the idea of Nykra itself, like the fundamental idea of the firstborn galaxy sort of thing. It's been around for about 6, 7 years.
Now,
That was
why
like
did
I can.
you why did you even start it? Like, what made you sit down and
Oh,
say, I'm gonna make this awesome game based on my life?
I have no idea. I think it's interesting because the the idea of Nykra was completely different when it started off. It was just sort of like
As it
I
usually
had
is.
this yeah, I had this theme of the firstborn galaxy and would just be this sort of sci-fi game. But
Yeah.
it's definitely grown as I've grown because when I first came up with the idea of the game, I was only like 14, 15,
Oh,
right?
man. Okay.
And so this was amidst of high school. This is when, the lovely high
Pivotal
school years
moments.
of, growing up and experiencing things and things changing and you going, what is going on?
Hmm.
And so like I can go back into my old like English books, year 7 English books, and they would literally I could go back to the end of the book and there'd be scribbles of things in Nykra, and they're like 5 years old, 5, 6 years old, of just these random drawings. I remember in year 9, I think, quite a few years ago, um, I actually created a language, and it was just sort of this random sort of scribble language. But I knew I wanted to do that eventually, and I'm sure we'll talk about that at some point as well with my actual language now. So as I'm saying is all these things that I had in the past that I thought were just sort of just making up shit for fun, right? It's just sort of just random stuff. They've actually gotten to a point where now it's all real rather than something that I was just bored with. And
Yeah.
I've realized looking back that it wasn't just me trying to make something. It was actually that's sort of hard to explain. But it's sort of like
You trying to
I've always
express
had it.
something.
Yeah, like the game has come into something that I felt like I've always needed. It was never a point where I was just like oh, maybe I'll just make this game. It's gone from I can't remember when I've not wanted to make a game, right? So that was the beginning, and then it's just the love of sci-fi. My parents are both like Trekkies and just love sci-fi, and so all these things combined with all my life experiences, I've gone through quite a few heartbreaks, and I've gone through all these moments in my life, and they've sort of come together and been like funneled down to this point of me making this game. So it's interesting. I know this sounds kind of dramatic, but it's
No,
yeah,
it's inspiring,
it's sort of
especially for younger people who are going through that crap right now.
yeah. Oh man, I've had so many young people contact me in terms of help if they're like going through depression or even just I want to
Yeah.
make a game. Right? I've had people go,
Yeah.
I want to make a game, and like how the hell did you do it? And I'm going, well. I'm going, well, I'm a little obsessed, so I think there's a lot of passion involved, but just keep at it.
Now, I'm
I mean,
curious, how obsessed are you? Because I
oh
imagine
man,
you've got to get to a point where some days you're working on the thing and you've got to be like worn down by the game or something to that
um,
effect.
I'm not joking when I say this. There is not one day where I'm not thinking about Nykra.
That's incredible.
So literally, even if I'm doing something else, if I'm playing Skyrim on my Switch or doing something, there is a point where the moment I sit down in my office chair, I immediately think about something, like absolutely anything. Even if it's like the dialogue that I was working on the previous day, or maybe some sort of feature, or even if it's the feeling of, I should probably continue work. I mean, it's yeah, I'm always thinking about it. But I think that there is the reason why I'm able to get it to how it is now. Because if I didn't have that, then it definitely wouldn't be where it is now. So,
Yeah, I keep
um,
thinking I'm trying to equate this kind of work to the filmmaking work that I have in shooting videos and putting that stuff together, and I just can't quite wrap my brain around
yeah, it's
everything
sort
that
of
you
like
do in the game,
yeah,
because you're, like you said, you're doing everything. You're doing
yeah,
the
absolutely
design, the
everything.
code, the music, the
Yeah.
aside from a few voice guests, I guess.
Oh yeah, I can't do like as you. I've got a relatively low voice. I can't do a female voice. So so I had to get some help in that area. Yeah,
Was
yeah,
it just
definitely.
one
But
voice, extra voice?
um at the moment I got the voice of Q. Jennifer Shell. She's amazing. But when I'm going to GDC in March this year, I'm going to be finding some more people. So hopefully, I'm really hoping that I'm gonna bring in my microphone and I'm gonna be finding some friends, hopefully female, because I do need female voices, right? A lot of the male voices I can sort of alter and do myself,
Sure.
but definitely, yeah, it's quite a noticeable difference because Q did have my voice and it sounded so wrong. It didn't fit at all. I have to be honest here. And as cool as the metaphor behind it was, it's I'm the
Oh
voice of
yeah,
Q as well. And
yeah,
I was like,
yeah.
nah, no, we won't do that. So yeah, what I'm saying is when I'm at GDC, I'm hopefully gonna find some cool people. I mean, maybe I will find
You said
some
in March,
guys
right?
as well. Just I mean, whatever happens, we'll see.
You said you're
But
going in March, right, for GDC?
yeah, March. Yeah, that's at San Francisco, which is a big trip for me.
Oh, see, I would have thought you would have gone to the one in London in February.
No, a lot of people think that. A lot of people thought because they're like, oh, you going to London? I'm going, London? No, I'm not going to London. Why? And because I didn't know that there was a GDC in London at all.
Uh,
And then they said, oh, GDC, and I was like, wait, what? And then no, I mean the San Fran one.
well,
I
dang,
mean, I'd
man,
love to go. Yeah,
I have colleagues that are going to GDC in San Francisco.
right.
I
You
got
should really
so
go.
close to going myself, and I thought that would have been like the perfect moment to meet you in person, but
Yeah.
I guess not.
Well,
Another
why
time,
can't you
another
go?
life. Uh, they ended up so my background's filmmaking, right?
Right,
I would have been going to shoot some footage for uh, the department that I work for in Microsoft, and
right,
they ended up going with a separate crew. So, not me.
right. I mean, that doesn't stop you from going altogether.
Well,
Because it's not like it's an invited thing. You just buy a ticket and you go.
true.
Yeah.
That would mean a whole
But
nother
again,
planning.
it's like it's quite a trek just to get there and
Certainly not as far as
accommodation and
for you, but
I
yeah.
mean, yeah, I've always wanted to go. Well, as long as I've known of it, I've always wanted to go. And thankfully, yeah, I was given the opportunity to go this year. So,
That's awesome,
um,
man. I'm
yeah,
really
it's
excited to hear
it's
about that.
yeah, it's gonna be good. It's gonna be good. I'll be meeting a whole lot of people. One person I really want to meet is Rami Ismail. Do you know who that is?
No.
He's the co-creator of Nuclear Throne and Vlambia. Absolutely amazing guy. He's seriously talented, and he's been following me for a while, and he was interested in Nykra for a while as well. And I'm just sort of yeah, he's been an inspiration. So I'm hoping to meet him, but we'll see. We'll see how it goes.
Nice.
But yeah,
All right. Moving forward then. Let's see. GC. I noticed back last year during your Kickstarter. How long did that last, by the way? Was just
the Kickstarter was at the end of 2016. So that was October. No, it was November. November the 7th, I think it was. I can't remember. Yeah, it was for a month, right? Because it goes for a month, 30 days.
Yeah.
And yeah,
Okay.
it was November the 7th, and then went to December the 7th.
You talked about working on Nykra full time, and I think you even said you ended up leaving your job.
Yeah,
Are
yeah,
are
that
you
was.
still kind of in that area right now?
It's an interesting situation. Because yeah, so was it March 2017? Yeah, March 2017. After I went to Australia and before I went to Japan, I left my job, my part-time job, which was just working at a supermarket, just because um, I knew that it took up a lot of time that I could be spending on Nykra,
Mm-hmm.
and it was also mentally draining. I would come home, and even if I was only working the first half of the day, I'd come home and I just wouldn't want to do anything. And so,
I can relate
and
to that.
so, yeah, it's yeah. I mean, and I was like, okay, well, I've got to make this decision, especially when I'm going to Japan. I sort of need to leave my job because it would just make things easier. Obviously, that meant suddenly I have to rely on my Kickstarter money a whole lot more, and get help from my parents if I need it and whatever. And so yeah, that's sort of it came to that. I've been wanting to. I've been saving up for the Japan trip for like a year and a half, and I wasn't gonna let that go.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
And
Yeah.
so that was an experience of a lifetime. Oh boy, that was amazing. And so yeah, and so ever since then I've been full time. I think it's about like the time I go to GDC would be the 1 year anniversary of working on it full time.
Okay.
Um, which is yeah, it's an achievement.
What's a normal day that looks like for Seth?
um, Phew. A normal day would probably be,
Because you
well,
live
I
on a
wake up.
farm
Well,
too, right?
yeah, I live in a rural area in New Zealand, in the middle of nowhere, absolutely nowhere. Like it's a 40-minute drive to the nearest city.
Okay.
Um, so it's yeah. Um, so my new schedule, because it's the new year and obviously New Year's resolutions, I've been going for runs recently. So I wake up and about 9 a.m. Because I work pretty late, and then I get up, get on my running get up, and then go for a run, about a kilometer run, and then come back, shower, and then basically straight onto the computer. That's sort of it. Like that's basically my
Okay.
day, because from that point on, I'm just working on Nykra, and then maybe lunchtime I get up, make
Maybe.
some 2-minute noodles, maybe get up, make some 2-minute noodles, and maybe make some matcha tea or something like that, and sit back down and continue. Now, sometimes if it's because I might be starting again really soon, I might be streaming, so this it generally helps my creative flow, because having people, um, I'd say criticize, but in a good way. People will be like talking about what I'm doing, and they'd be asking things, or be making conversation, and that would keep my thoughts going, rather than
Mm-hmm.
sitting there by myself trying to do something. So yeah, depending if I'm streaming or not, things can change.
Do you ever find
Um,
people who are watching influencing what's being implemented in the game?
oh, definitely, more than definitely. Yeah, it's there are times when someone would point something out or say something like, oh, you know, um, something doesn't look right here, or you should add this, or you should add that, and I 9 times out of 10 I do, because I trust my viewers. They're great people, and there are a lot of times when they see something that I generally overlook because I'm so
Mm-hmm.
focused on just trying to get something done.
Yeah.
And by the sounds of it, they're all gamers. They all know what they're talking about, and they're all relatively passionate in Nykra as well, which I wouldn't trade for the world. And it's cool that when I'm making the game, they go, oh, um, I don't know, like there's that enemy should be moving a bit faster, or maybe they should attack a bit faster, or something very minor. And I go, oh, actually, yeah, that's a great idea, and I
Yeah.
edit that. But yeah, so I do the stream sometimes, and as I said, I will be continue streaming very soon. Just sort of having a bit of a break, a Christmas break, and yeah, I mean that's kind of it. Then at like 1, 2 a.m. I go to bed. and then restart.
Simple enough, straightforward.
Yeah.
Working
It's
hard.
pretty straightforward.
Now I know
Yeah.
you were streaming, or at least you started streaming right after the Kickstarter, or have you always been doing that?
Um, See, I thought that I only just started streaming after the Kickstarter, but I found out while looking back at my timeline, I guess you could say, of my streaming things, I've been streaming for quite a while. Apparently, I didn't even like. There were times. I guess there were times when I'd be like, "Hey, let's stream just for the sake of it, just for fun." But yeah, I've been apparently doing it for almost 5 years.
Oh wow.
Um,
Okay.
yeah. So, and I remember looking back now, I'm going, oh yeah, actually there were times when I'd be working on it and I would just randomly start streaming because, like, why not? Whereas now it's more of a routine thing.
Mm-hmm.
There was a point where I did it almost every single day for 4 weeks straight. And except for the weekend, I think weekends I don't do it. And
Speaking
yeah,
of
I mean,
weekends, do you ever give yourself time to do other things?
I have to be honest. When I woke up, I had no idea what day it was. It's. I mean, I'm not joking. There are times when I would, my friends would be like, "Hey, you want to meet up this time, or you want to meet up on the 14th?" And I'm like, "What? Okay." And I'd be looking and be like, "Oh shit, it's the 2nd of December. Okay, yeah, sure." Like I would have no idea. My mind is on a completely different temporal scale. I have no idea when I am. So,
Kind of makes me wonder
um,
what's going to happen when Nykra is actually finished.
well, the thing is, for me, 2017 just flew by in an instant. So I'm a little worried that when Nykra is out, which is hopefully this year, hopefully, subject to change,
Of course.
that yes, of course, yeah, I probably will look back and be like, oh my, wow, time has just disappeared because I was, in fact, yesterday I was out shopping and I found a classmate that I used to be with, and they looked so much older, and I was like, I didn't want to make any comments because you don't say that sort of
Of
stuff, but
course, yeah.
but in fact they said it to me. They're like, oh Seth, you look really old, and I was like, oh. I was like, do I? And they're like, yeah, you got a beard and everything. And I was like, oh yeah, I do. Because in school you have to be cleanly shaven, and now I just don't care.
Oh, okay.
And so and I only just realized, and I got home and I looked in the mirror because I generally don't look in the mirror that often, and I'm like, oh my god, like how long has it
I'm
been?
old.
And I realized it's been 3 years since high school, and I was like, oh whoa, it's been a while.
Three
But yeah,
years. You call 3 years
2 years,
a
something like that.
while?
Yeah,
Okay.
well, only because this person. It felt like I only just saw this person yesterday,
Right, right,
and
right.
at school. But no, it was
I
ages
get
ago.
you. I get you.
But yeah, and I remember talking to my parents about this because it was brought up at a Christmas dinner, and they were saying like look, every year will become shorter and shorter, and eventually 10 years go by, and you're like, what? So I mean, yeah, I mean, it's a fact of life. It just happens. So
So
yeah,
you
it's
mentioned the
interesting.
game coming out this year, and I know you
Yeah.
kind of hinted at a summer release. But
Yeah.
do you think, regardless of whether it's summer or not, it will definitely come out this year?
Hmm. I look. I know, and if it doesn't, I'll be very sad. But I know, and I will try very hard. Yes, definitely before the end of this year because it's at a state where it's actually going really well. And if
Mm-hmm.
I knuckle down super hard, the date that I sort of partially teased could be the actual date that it comes out.
Now,
Because that
what what will direct this to happen or not? Like, how much left do you have to do?
Well, this is an interesting thing because it's as the more I make of the game, the easier it is to make, if that makes sense. So
Oh,
there are a lot
totally.
of
Yeah, yeah.
parts in there. There are a lot. Excuse me. There are a lot of parts in there that, like for example, dialogue, and there's inventories and all these things that the more I make, the sort of more it becomes second nature. And so when I'm
Mm.
adding something, I go da 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 da, and it takes 10th of the time that it would have because I've already done it like 5 times. And so I guess what I'm saying is that as the game progresses, things will become easier and easier to add. Like recently, I added literally 14 rooms in the time it would have taken to make one, because I'm so quick at using my like tile editor and object editor and just putting everything in the game, adding all the dialogue, and it was just done in a matter of like a day or so.
So you're
And
building, you're designing and building each level, each
yeah,
world.
so
How
every
big are these
single
worlds?
um every single room is hand, I guess you could say, painted by me.
Yeah.
Every single tile I place by hand, every single detail that you see is there on purpose. And so, and in fact, you see this quite prominently on the ship that you land on there after the demo sort of time.
Okay.
And because you go on an elevator, and the elevator has 8 floors, and every single floor is completely different. You walk off, and then every single corridor has something different happening in it. I mean, it's all very slight different, but it's what I'm saying is that I spent hours just placing every single tile individually to make sure it looks different. And so for the size of a world, so the demo had about, how many rooms? It had like 30 rooms, I think 20, 30 rooms.
Oh, jeez.
So that's the outside and the inside rooms. And it will probably have more because now this isn't really a spoiler because in fact it's one of the first things Q says. When the moment you start on like a mound of dirt where the origin is, and you walk down and you walk to the right to go into the door. But right beneath you there's this giant door, and Q says, "Whoa, that's a big door. You know, there doesn't seem to be a way to open it." That door literally opens out to another 20 rooms you can go to. So. Because that door, when I explained how you can find a key that can open it, that's the sort of thing. Like it's a secret sort of area. And behind that door, it's going to be filled with lore. There's going to be a lot of history. You find a lot of very saddening events because the whole planet is deserted, and basically behind that door, you find out how it happened.
Oh, I find that so fascinating.
Yeah, because there's something that I like about suspense. So you might be going through this world, you might feel confused, you might be going, I don't know what's going on. But then the more you play, the more it sort of sinks in. Because I do feel there are a lot of games that might, suspend you and go, oh, ooh, something happened, but then it's quickly resolved with you open up a book and it tells you. Whereas in Nykra, I take a lot of pride in the whole, like the start, or basically the length of the demo, that whole area is completely deserted. And by the end of that time, because I'm going to be adding more stuff to it, I'm hopefully going to be making it so you feel like something isn't right. And that's eventually... So then that's pushed to the back of your mind, right? And then eventually you go through the game, and you end up going back to that planet after so long, and you realize what has actually gone wrong, and then you end up being able to open that door, and then it all just sort of like hits you, and you're like, oh, that's what happened. So that's the sort of feeling that I'm wanting, and I spent a long time designing that.
It's so in depth.
Yeah, there's a lot of things that I'm, I guess you could say I'm passionate. I'm passionate about like making sure that the experience is interesting rather than
that definitely, certainly makes an experience.
Yeah, because I don't want people to just be like, oh, okay, yeah, that was fun. I want people to be like, I want to know more. I'd rather people ask that rather than question why they played it.
Now, how long is this story?
Now, this is an interesting question because I don't really know how long it will end up being because there are a lot of dialogue. There's so much dialogue in this game, which does bring up a problem that someone asked me. They said, is there going to be localization? There's going to be different translations. And unfortunately, I don't know. I don't know if I'm able to do that because there's so much dialogue and it's all hard coded into the game. I have no idea because I thought of a way to do it last night, but I realized that there's also these little notes that are in the game as well that you read, and I realized that they aren't part of the same text system, and I'm like, oh no, it's just going to be a whole massive mess. So I don't know about localization. I'm sure people will probably complain about that, but anyway. What was the question again?
How long is it? the story.
So the length of the demo, it says chapter 1 at the very start.
Yeah.
And so I'm sort of assuming each chapter would be the same sort of length in terms of gameplay and experience. And chapter 2 starts um, maybe about 10, 15 minutes after the demo ends. So people, and I've got an average time, people spend about from 20 to 40 minutes playing the demo. So if we say half an hour plus 15, 45. So if we go 45 times 7 minutes, that's probably how long the game will be, plus minus an hour.
Okay.
However long that is. So I don't know. It's one of those things that it would either be a really long game or it'd be a really short game. I have no idea.
Well, considering that I'm a very slow reader, it might be a long game for me.
But the thing is, a lot of people, I've heard that, well, in the comments that I've read, people like that though. People like a lot of dialogue. People like to sit there and read it. And I like that because it means that what I'm writing actually has some meaning to it rather than, because I remember watching someone recently play the demo, and I swear there were moments where they didn't even read it because they were just clicking up. I could hear them
certainly.
tapping the up key, not even reading it. And I'm going, surely, she's sort of explaining important things. You might want to, read it. But yeah, there are games like, again, Skyrim, that have a lot of talking. And I can understand when you have the subtitles open, then you can just quickly skim it and then go to the next one. You don't need to listen to them. I can understand that. But with Nykra, because the thing is in Skyrim, I think the text appears instantly. There's no, it doesn't go per letter. Whereas Nykra goes per letter. It just sort of appears as they talk. And
the exact opposite, going into that whole skipping the story mode thing and into, I just want to shoot stuff.
Yeah.
Can we talk about EO?
Oh gosh, the beloved EO. So I'm so happy people like him because he's a character that I put so much time and effort into the construction of how he's presented in the game. And I say he, I mean technically it's an it, but whatever. Because the thing is in general. Q treats EO as her younger brother. In the terms of if you can imagine the way that the conversation flow between them, Q treats him like a younger brother, and EO speaks in third person. So EO says things like EO is confused, and maybe she would reassure him and be like, "No, everything's okay, EO." I didn't put EO in the demo because because it's not in that part of the story. So you meet EO a little later on, in a very sort of it's a rather emotional scene because EO, bit of backstory. I mean, it's not really much of a spoiler, but a bit of backstory. EO was he's an electrocomnipotent, which is where the EO comes from. So he's an electronic, sort of like what they would call a god. He's an electronic god, and so he was found on an alternate dimension, and they happened to find him, and they sort of took him away, and they basically tortured him, and made him into a weapon because he is actually a ball of light. He's like an energy sphere, and they encased him in this sort of metallic body, but instead of just floating around and talking, the body forces him to shoot when he finds danger, and so. This is it's sort of like a metaphor because it's like being forced to do something you don't want to do, and so basically in the game you can control EO, right? You can you can manually sort of point at things and he sort of has an automatic aim and you can shoot whenever you want.
He's definitely a mechanic in the plane, right?
He's one of the biggest mechanics in Nykra, and I haven't really showed much of him recently because long story short, I'm making him better. I'm making him even more interesting. And basically, it's gone to a point now where EO, in terms of game mechanics, will actually, and I'm really hoping people will enjoy this, EO will actually fight for you. So what EO will do is that when let's say you're in a situation where enemies like some EM creatures sort of appear. And if you, the player, aren't if you don't react fast enough, EO will kill them for you. Like
Oh.
I'm going to be doing some artificial intelligence, sort of like some background coding, where it will basically sort of predict where things might be, and it will try to basically protect Q, because EO was a character that I really wanted to make important, and so I felt like if I gave him the aspect of I want to protect Q at all costs, no matter if it's anything, absolutely anything, I will always protect
Mhm.
her no matter what. I felt like that would be a really cool story mechanic.
Well, it sounds like
And
it introduces a lot of surprises too.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to spoil anything, but their EO is a very intense character.
Hmm.
Because Q, she's very she's not really supple, but she's lighthearted. She's this little person where if you open your arms, and she'll probably hug you. She's like a very kind person. And so if you imagine her in situations where she's getting attacked by these horrible, dark manifestation creatures, and she has this floating one of the most powerful weapons in the universe, who has the brain of like a 12-year-old brother. You sort of like you have to protect it. So they're sort of like protecting each other.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
but in truth, Q knows that EO is, to put it lightly, he is absolutely like the most powerful thing. He can obliterate things with just like one shot.
A
And
menace to
so
society.
yeah, he is, yeah. And so she knows that because there are a lot of points in the story where basically people try to steal EO because they've heard of his
Oh, that's
abilities.
interesting.
And so I mean, yeah, it's I won't spoil anymore, but it's quite interesting. I could honestly talk about this for so long,
Well, I know
because
you
there's so
introduced some
much.
of the mechanics that EO has,
Yeah,
like
yeah,
changing the barrel, the
yeah.
energy, the
Yeah, one of the major mechanics of EO is EO, and this sort of ties into the reason why he was difficult to convince to come along with you. Basically, uh, he opens up his mainframe, um, so that you, as in Q, can actually edit his abilities. And so there are a lot of times when like for example, um, because he starts off relatively raw as well. As in, what I'm saying is you can upgrade him,
mm-hmm.
and so that's what those parts are for as well. So you might find that you find a certain part, and you find some blueprints, and then you can actually create an upgraded input module that goes into the back of the EO, and then suddenly his bullets are way more consistent, and there's like all these little things in there. But the one thing about it is this discovery. So the discovery aspect of it is that the more you edit EO, the more sort of opens up, and the more he opens up to you. And so
Okay.
at first you can only edit like one small thing, but the more you talk, and the more you sort of get to know him, the more he allows you to
Oh,
edit
jeez.
him.
I'm getting
Um,
excited just listening to this because
yeah,
I can tell there is a pivotal climax moment in the story, and
yeah.
I know you don't want to give
Uh,
it away, but
no, I'm not gonna give it away,
I can tell it's
but
going to be quite something.
it's yeah. I mean, there's so many characters because there is a lot of very intense moments between those two. There's also a lot of very intense moments between Taff and Q as well. Another character you meet, and Seren. I haven't really talked about Seren much. He's another character. That's the one I said buys the materialistic boots and stuff.
Okay.
Um, because there's a lot about Nykra that a lot of people don't know. And I sort of want to talk about it because I know that it's not really going to be said in the game. So I sort of want to tell people in the sake of like just people slamming doors, of just like people understanding some of the story behind it.
Yeah.
And for example, the main character Q, she has these face markings. That one, it's a circle and a forehead down to her nose with a line, and then lines from her eyes, and then circles on her cheeks. And that marking there is in the lore of Nykra, that's known as the sign of Nenox. And basically, if you are born with that marking, so let's say you could say that you have a kid, and then suddenly you realize it's got these markings on its face, and you're like, what? Um, that is known as the sign of Nenox, and they inherently have these some sort of ability of some kind.
My kid
And
is a
so,
god.
yeah, pretty much.
Okay.
So yeah, and so Q has these face markings, and she finds out that Taff has these face markings, and she finds out that Saren has these
Oh.
face markings, and then you all sort of realize that you are all able to do certain things, because these face markings, as I said, they give you powers, but these powers they're not like you can fly or you can, you're invulnerable. It's more of accessibility powers. So in the story, Taff tells Q that she's the only one that can use the Baltimore cubes, the ones that teleport you.
I
That's
see.
one of the powers. That's one of the things that she can do because that's what she's granted.
Mm-hmm.
And so, and since it's only just told like right after the demo, Taff eventually admits saying that, or she tells one of her powers. So a lot of these things are around the Patalan artifacts. So the Patalan are these like alien species who were before everything. They're the ones that created the language. They're the ones that built a lot of these crazy artifacts, like the Enox cube, like the Baltimo, the Boltoda, all these like very
The
high
ruins
tech.
that we see in the
Yeah, the
demo, yeah.
ruins. Yeah, and so the game is that you discover all these secrets about this alien civilization that built everything, and you find out their name, you find out about them, and basically the markings grant you certain abilities to these certain objects that they've made. Um, so
So do you discover these abilities as the game
yeah,
progresses?
yeah. So the first ability you discover is you're able to hold the Enox cube. So the Enox cube is one of the artifacts, and if so Q is one of the few that can hold it. I think Taff can hold it, but she has no use for it, so she doesn't really care because that's sort of who Taff is. And but if you are not a holder of the cube, if you don't have any markings, basically it will disintegrate your hand.
Ooh.
So there's a lot of like really intense. The Patalan who created all these things, they decided to make each of them have like an incredibly light and incredibly dark side to them. So if you are able to hold it, you are able to atomize things and store them and reatomize them. All
That
these
is a
like
really
crazy
cool
little.
mechanic, by the way. I really,
Yeah,
I,
yeah. I'm
I can
I'm
see that
glad
being
people
very
like it.
useful. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, it's quite a powerful object. In fact, the reason why, cause I had someone question, because I explained this once to someone about how there's artifacts. They said, well, how come the Enox is the only one that's like handheld? Are there any other handheld sort of artifacts rather than these giant cubes? And there isn't, because the Enox itself is incredibly important to the story. It's one of those sort of like background sort of things. You think that it's not much, but then later on it plays a big part.
Oh, okay.
Um, because the sequel to Nykra is called Enox.
The sequel to
Yeah,
Nykra. So
yeah.
you're making another game?
Supposedly, yeah.
Supposedly. Slated
Depending,
for 2032.
yeah, yeah, pretty much. I mean, depending on how well Nykra goes, the story won't end. There will be a point where I will expand the story, and the Enox will be the focus of the next story. Because yeah, it's rather intense. I have like so many ideas, and I wake up sometimes in the middle of the night, and I sort of get my notebook, and I can't, like, I just got so many things in my brain. I
Ah,
just
it's
gotta get them down.
fantastic. Now,
But
going from the future to the past, because I'm very curious about this, and I wanted to ask this. You participated in the Ludum Dare, and
yes,
in this
yeah,
previous session, you got second place.
yeah.
Congratulations.
Second overall.
And
Thank
you
you, thank
you
you.
mentioned participating in previous years too, and I'm curious, where are those games? Can we access those games anywhere?
Unfortunately, because I wasn't very smart, I put the games on my Dropbox, and so from those points, I have actually emptied my Dropbox and done things like that. So they have
Oh.
disappeared, unfortunately. So I mean, I think I've managed to salvage one. There's like one game, I think. Yeah, I think there's one that I found. But the old Ludum Dare website basically has all my entries, and I think I might be able to find them. I don't know, but I know that it's unfortunate because a lot of the other entries that I had have disappeared. So yeah, I mean they weren't very good. I gotta be honest, they were pretty terrible. They were terrible games. Um, if you actually go back enough, like one of the first few, I didn't actually use Dropbox. I used MediaFire, so some of them are actually
Oh
still
wow.
there. So you can actually play some really old ones, but they're so bad. It's very bad. I
Is it
mean,
really
this is what
something you
else.
want to share?
Yeah, yeah. They were the one of the like first few games that I ever made. And so yeah, I mean, they're not too bad, but I mean, Nykra is definitely my biggest achievement.
Of
And so
course. Yeah.
yeah,
Well,
yeah.
judging from your comparisons from when you started Nykra to the stuff that you're putting together now, we could definitely
Yeah.
see a change. If anything, in the color palette, you've definitely upped that
Oh man, yeah.
quite a bit.
I remember with the colors I spent, geez, I would say years because it sort of was a progression, but it was
Mm-hmm.
I remember spending days after days consecutively without stopping, like trying to come up with a palette, like a 32 colored palette that would define all of Nykra, and I wouldn't add and I
All
wouldn't
of
take
Nykra.
away. It would just be absolutely everything in one color palette,
Wow.
and it sort of is that at the moment. I've actually got 64 colors, so there was um, quite a few colors that I really needed, and I couldn't I couldn't just use the ones that I had. And yeah, every single game in sorry, every single color in Nykra is part of this palette, and I don't use any other color. Um, and that's something that a lot of people don't really know actually. I'm
Now
very passionate about that.
you said there are 7 planets, right?
Yeah,
And there's the ship.
yeah. Seven
Is
planets, a
there
ship, and there's some other places too. Yeah.
some other places? Is that something you can talk about or mention?
Yeah, yeah. Well, those other places are basically like other ships, or there'd be
Oh, okay.
the Daipen. So the Daipen is a place you go to. The Daipen is just the name that the locals have for it, but it's basically a space elevator. And so the ship that you're on docks at the elevator, and then you're in space, and then you take the elevator down to the surface of the planet.
Oh,
Um,
okay.
and so yeah, so there's that. And then there's one particular place that you go to. So it's it's not really spoiling anything because I have shown it before, but it's the when you first start the game, Nia talks to you, who's one of the 7 observers. He's sort of like he says, I'm not a god, and that's sort of part of the story as well. They're basically beings who live outside of everything, and they can see things, but they can't interact. Hence observers, and um, and so basically you end up meeting them. So you end up on their spatial dimensional plane of existence, and because there's a way of getting to it, and I have shown it. There was this big golden heptagate. Even
Mm-hmm.
in the demo trailer, the very end of the demo trailer shows this gate with this black and orange sort of like zooming thing in the inside of it.
Yeah.
That's how you get to there. And yeah, so you end up there and you end up talking to Nia in person. Now, I'm saying in person because when you first see Nia, it's just a heptagon that sort of talks to you, and it's like white and black. But Nia is actually a thing. It's actually like a creature. Now, Nia, well, there's 7 of them. Nia, La, Dox, Kiv, Eno, Ven, and Toll.
Which you
And they're all
recently created. Or put
actually,
together, I should say.
well,
Me?
well, well.
I
There's
don't know.
7. There's many 7 things. Like there's the 7 corruptors. They're the bad ones. Then there's the 7 observers. The 7 observers I've had for about 4 years. in terms of design. And so I've always had their name. I remember even in high school. I remember because I was a weirdo. I used to just like write on the back of my books Neolardoxkip and Eventol, Neolardoxkip and Eventol, because it was just something that was it just flowed when I was writing it. And uh, and so in the Ptahloth language, Neolardoxkip and Eventol actually means it's actually a poem, and it's a poem that's made up of their names, and it's like this really complicated story behind it.
Wow.
But yeah,
Jeez.
so basically you end up meeting Nia and all the other ones, and they're actually a thing. And the design I had for them, I've been keeping secret. I haven't shown. Well, I did like a silhouette of it, but people doesn't really know what it looks like yet. And
Okay.
I'm going to be
Yeah.
keeping that a secret until the game's out, because Nia, the actual body of Nia, you see him as a mortal, thing.
Hmm.
It's I'm so proud of the design because it's so alien, and I've never done anything like this before, and it's rather unique. I don't think I've seen anything like it before, and it's inspired by, if people have seen the movie Arrival. Arrival is one of my favorite movies of all time, and the heptapods, which are the aliens, have
Hmm.
this very unique body shape, and that was some of the inspiration. And so I got sort of that, and I got my own experiences, and sort of put it together, and I created these creatures. And so you end up meeting him, and he end up talks to you, and ends up talking to you, and that's when he gives you the Eedramor, which is a book, and you use the book to actually study the language, which is a
Good
whole
grief.
other part
There's
of the game.
so much detail in this game. I feel like stop,
Yeah.
stop now.
I mean, look, I could talk about this for so long. There's so much into it, and
You do this every single day. You wake up thinking about it. You go through your activities
yeah,
thinking about it. I believe
yeah.
you when you say you can talk about this all day.
Yeah, that's just the tip of the iceberg in terms
Good
of
lord.
details, because there's a lot of because there are 16 different species in Nykra. Each of them have a history behind them.
Jeez. So I mean,
And
how much time do you spend writing all of this? Is it just kind of
uh,
like over the years that all just kind of came
yeah,
together?
it's sort of like a collection of things. It's sort of just accumulated. There was a point when um I mean, just yeah, it was about mid high school. I was at that sort of obsessed stage, like truly obsessed, where I wouldn't even do schoolwork, and I literally, not joking, I wrote a 43-paged description of every single species of Nykra, and the history of them and whatnot.
Well, it's
Um,
clearly something you're passionate about,
yeah,
and
I mean,
something I want to save a lot of this for interviews in the future.
yeah,
Because if
yeah,
you
I
say
mean,
too much, then I got nothing to talk about next time we meet, and then
yeah.
what do we do
I
then?
mean, there's definitely a whole lot we could talk about.
So
But
let me wrap this up now, because
yeah,
like I said, I would definitely like to talk to you more later. You've already given so much amazing information. I'm certainly inspired by the dedication you have for this game and
thank you,
the
thank
amount
you.
of detail in this game. I can definitely appreciate.
Yeah,
But
thank you.
let me ask, um, for people who are curious, because I know I found you via Kickstarter and I donated via Kickstarter, but now there are pre-sales available, right?
Yes. So Nykra.com. Scroll down, and yeah, there are pre-orders there
Now,
at the
does
moment.
anything
Yeah.
else come with that pre-order, or is there some other way that people can
Um.
help?
Well, the thing is, I might. Um. This would sort of be for an everyone thing, but I might eventually put a lot of my notes, a lot of my a lot of the lore and stuff into a PDF. So when people actually download the game via Steam, they would actually be given the PDF of all the descriptions as well if they happen to want to read that. But also, if you pre-order the game, there's a little drop down, so you can choose just the game, or the game and the OST, which is the original soundtrack completely composed by me. And those are the only two options. I mean, I'm keeping it simple. You get the game, or you get the game and the music. And when you get the game, you'll be given a redeemable key for Steam, and when it's out, right? And yeah, that's pretty much it. Just keeping things simple.
On my end, it looks like Nykra is $20 US dollar, and Nykra plus the soundtrack is $28. Yeah. I'm not gonna lie, I think that's kind of low, but I might be a little biased on that. So
I mean, I got some things to say about that, because it's something that I've been very I mean, I've seen all these really cool games come out, and then I look at the price and I'm like, whoa, I can't spend that much. Like that's a lot. And that feeling of I don't have that much money, because there are people who really like games but don't have a whole lot of money.
Sure. Yeah.
And I don't want to cut them out. So I knew that if I was to, even though I've spent basically my whole life on this game, I don't want to make it something like $60 and then suddenly only have a few people buy it. But then I would have people who have been following me for years and then suddenly aren't able to buy it because it's so expensive.
So you definitely want to get this out there and share it.
Yeah, I find, and I've definitely become sure of this ever since the demo came out. I get so much it's called I get a lot of satisfaction. That's the word, satisfaction, from people playing it and telling me that they like it. I mean, it was almost tempting. There was a moment, and it crossed my mind, where I was going to make Nykra free. I was so tempted, because there's
I would refuse. I'd be like, "Where's the donate button? I'm giving you something for this."
I mean, and also that'd be unfair, because the people who the Kickstarter paid, I mean, that wouldn't work. But Doki Doki Literature Club, which is an amazing game, that's free, and that's been downloaded 1 million times plus. And so that was like, whoa, if I did this for Nykra, people would talk about it, because it means it doesn't matter if you have money or not, because you could just play it. But I knew that I sort of need to get something out of it, or else I'm going to be living on the streets. So like, so that's why I put more of the cheap end rather than middle end or expensive end, because I just want people to play it.
I admire that, man.
I just like, the profit is nice, but to me, I want people to experience it more than anything. And I know that it being only $20 is a reasonable price. And I'm hoping people would see that and go, okay, especially if they hear about it, especially if they see the ratings or whatever the situation might be. I don't want them to see it and then go, $60? Hell no, I'm not going to pay that. So yeah, that's the reasoning behind it. But yeah.
Now going even a little further, I know we talked about this right before the show. I had asked, what if Sony came in and said, hey, we're interested on providing distribution, and you talked a little bit about some studios, smaller studios. Can you voice a little more about what if another studio came to you and said, hey, we want to help with marketing and get this kind of out there?
Well, I don't know. This is something that it would require so much thinking, because the main point of Nykra at the moment for me personally is the challenge, is the ability, if I'm a lone developer, if I'm doing everything, is it possible for me to also release the game? And it means that unfortunately I am hindered because I don't have a large reaching. I've been trying to be incredibly active on my Twitter, and I've reached 7,000 followers recently, and I'm trying to grow it as much as possible, so when the time comes and I go, Nykra is out, then people would respond positively rather than only a few people.
A retweet storm, a bruise.
Yeah, I mean, I hope. But the thing is, I know that if I went with a publisher, I mean, it would open so many more doors. But the problem is, though, it would technically not be completely mine anymore. And so it's a complicated situation. If Sony did, I probably would. But if a smaller publisher, because I've had smaller publishers, I've had, if I remember, like 8 at the moment. I've already had 8 individual publishers come to me and say, we really like Nykra, can we please publish it? And I had to turn them all down because
Heck, if I was a publisher, I'd ask you the same thing.
yeah, I greatly appreciate it. I mean, it's incredibly heartwarming, but the whole point of Nykra is to make it onto my own Steam, and literally, and it's going to be a challenge. I know that I'm probably going to get way less sales because I'm doing it by myself, but um, to me, I feel there'd be way more kudos involved as well. Because, for example, if I'm actually going to go for a job, an actual game dev job, I could be like, hey, I made this game and I did everything myself. I made this amount of money. I did everything, and I feel like that would be more prestigious rather than going, I made this, but some publisher did the rest for me. So I don't know. It's a weird subject because a lot of people are very opinionated about this. A lot of people think that you can't release a game without publishing it, rather than have a publisher.
And
But
I'm not a huge history buff on indie gaming, but there are only so many indie games in the past that have also done this approach where they do everything themselves, including distribution.
Yeah, I mean,
Publishing.
I can't think of too many games that just came out under their own steam. I think there was one that just popped into mind, Newton Muds. I think there's like one game that I could think of where the guy did everything himself, but even then, I think he got help. But I don't. It's not a common thing. In fact, it's very uncommon because these days it's borderline impossible to release a game in the millions of games on Steam, and then just not probably not millions, but lots of games on Steam, and then actually have people buy it. It's very difficult. Very, very
And
difficult.
we haven't even touched all the aspects that you actually work on. So I'm going to save that for another episode and kind of conclude this a little bit. So thank you so much,
All
Seth,
good.
for your
All
time.
good. Hey, no problem. Thank you very much for having me on. I really enjoyed chatting about it. It's good to get some
Excellent.
stuff off my chest.
Yeah, man. We'll do it again. We definitely will.
Yeah, most definitely, most definitely. But yeah, no, thank you very much.
Obviously, a lot going into this game, and if you're into some heavy lore-based games, you should definitely check this out. The game is beautiful, it sounds great, it's peaceful and calming, thought-provoking, and don't forget to try the demo. Seth is on Twitter as Endesga, where he posts about his progress with the game, among other things. Check out the links in this post to get more information. And also, thanks to Seth for providing the music in this episode. And until next time, we'll see you beyond the Singularity, travelers.